this project, you're going to need, obviously, freshly wedged clay, a fettling knife, wire tool to cut your clay, spray bottle, some modeling tools, a rubber rib, a bending wheel not pictured, as well as a few other tools that we will get to along the way, including a wooden spoon. You're going to cut your clay into 2 equal-sized pieces. You're going to form each of them into a ball, and then starting with one, just insert your thumb to make a hole for your pinch pot. Make sure your hole doesn't go all the way to the bottom. About the thickness of your finger should be just fine. Since this is such a large pinch pot, I also just used my fist to help me shape the bottom of that since my thumbs were not long enough. You want to continue until you get the size bowl that you were looking for, and then you're going to grab your other piece of clay and do the exact same thing. If your clay has a big crack in it like mine, you want to make sure you fix that sooner than later. If you don't fix it at this stage, it's just going to get larger as your pinch pot gets larger. So once you have both of your pinch pots about the same size, you're going to take your rubber rib, and then you are going to smooth everything out. Once you have your sizes and everything is smoothed out, you're going to let that sit so it can just harden up a little bit so it can support its own weight. In the meantime, we are going to make our spout. So you'll need the same tools as before, plus a piece of paper, some scissors. You'll also need 2 sticks so you can measure out the thickness of your clay, a rolling pin, and also a needle tool. You're going to take your piece of paper and then you're going to fold it in half. Right on the seam of your paper, you're going to draw one side of your shape for your teapot spout. Then with your paper still folded, cut it out so you have 2 halves of your exact same thing. You're then going to take your clay, roll it out so it's nice and even, spray down your slab of clay, and then you're just going to put your template right on top. Since the clay is wet, it will just stick and it won't move around for you. And then you can cut it all out. And of course, we are going to score and slip. And then we are going to fold those sides together so they meet. The objective is to create a cone or a funnel shape. So you want to make sure you smooth out that seam really nicely. And then to reinforce that seam on the inside, you're going to create a small coil, score and slip it, of course. And then you're going to use a wooden modeling tool just to smooth everything out. Once you have your seam all smoothed out, you're then going to shape it, and you're going to open the end so the water can or the tea can come out. Once you have the opening at your spout, congratulations, you now have a finished teapot spout that just needs a little bit more cleaning up. After your teapot spout is done, you're then going to grab a pretty good piece of clay and roll out a pretty heavy coil. This coil needs to be long enough to wrap around your teapot. This is going to reinforce your 2 halves to stick together. You're going to score and slip your 2 halves, stick them together really well, score everything along that seam, score your coil, slip your coil, slip your sphere egg shape now, and then you're going to attach your coil and split it in 2, and you're going to smooth that out either direction. This is one that you really have to trust the process and believe that it's going to look really nice in the end. We just have to remove some of that material now. So now you're going to take a rubber rib and just continue to remove and scrape that material until you get a shape that's more or less the shape you're looking for. We're still a little bit egg-shaped, but now we need to open the top. So I'm going to use my compass to create my round opening. I'm going to cut out that round opening, and then I'm going to use a spoon, a wooden spoon, and I'm just going to tamper that inside just to push that back out so I'm less of an egg shape and more of a sphere. I'm going to smooth my inside out also, make sure there's no bumps or holes. And then once I have a shape that I'm happy with, I'm then going to go back to my rubber rib and I'm once again going to smooth everything out. Now it's time to place my teapot spout. I'm going to make sure it's centered from both sides and of course the front. I'm going to draw a line around it so I know where I need to score and slip, but also where I'm going to add my holes. I'm going to use a hole cutter just to make sure all of those holes are nice and even, and those holes are actually going to make my teapot function. After, I'm going to score and slip both my teapot and my spout, and I'm going to make sure that it is adhered really well with my hand on the inside, and then smear that all out so I know that connection is nice and tight. Once I have my spout on and everything is nice and secure, I'm then going to grab my rasp and I'm just going to use that to remove any bumps, any ridges, or any fingerprints. And make a mess. Then I'm going to spray it down with my water bottle, and I'm going to go back to my rubber rib and just smooth, smooth, smooth. Next, I'm going to make my handle. So I'm just going to roll out a pretty thick coil, and I'm going to manipulate it into the shape that I would like. I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, just so it's going to hold that shape. I don't have to worry about it flopping around on me. Once my handle is made, I'm then going to find the center of the back, and I'm going to use a roller and I'm just going to trace that line down so I have a nice straight line so I know where I need to score and slip. I'm going to take my handle, score and slip the parts that are going to touch my teapot. Now I'm going to adhere that really well. I'm going to use another modeling tool just to smear out any of that extra slip to make sure that connection point is good. Then I'm also going to use a coil in a very similar way. Whenever I added the coil to the center of the pot, I'm going to split it in half and push the material onto the handle as well as onto the teapot and just smooth that all out until it looks something like that. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the bottom part of the handle and smooth it out until it looks something like that. Ta-da! We have now finished the first part of our teapot. We are going to let this rest overnight before we move on to our bottom. When we start working on the bottom of our teapot, we want to make sure we create some type of nest so we don't crush the top or crush our handle. Then create a coil. Score and slip both your teapot and your coil. Attach your coil and then cut off any extra. And then using the similar technique of cutting it in half, smearing half of it onto the teapot, and you're going to smooth everything out using a wooden modeling tool. And then also scraping away any unnecessary material using a loop tool. It's going to be a very similar process for the top of our teapot. You're going to roll another coil, you're going to score and slip it. And then since my coil wasn't long enough, I just cut another little tiny piece of coil and just put it right into that spot. Smoothed it all out. Split my coil in half. Smoothing half of my coil down. And the other half, I'm then going to use my fingers to kind of pinch into the shape that I want. Once I've smoothed everything out with my wooden modeling tool, I'm then going to move to my sponge. And now I'm going to start making my lid. So I'm going to measure out the size using my compass. And then I use the sponge just to help me get the dome shape I wanted for my lid. I created a little handle. Made sure it fit. Scored and slipped. And smoothed out everything around that handle. If you are just interested in making a teapot, you'd be done at this stage. You'd be ready to let it dry out and bisque fire. But if you'd like to also make the cups to go along with it, keep watching. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the shape for my base and for my sides. I'm going to grab another piece of clay and I'm going to roll it out using my thickness stick so it's not too thin or too thick. I'm going to spray down my slab of clay and I'm going to stick my templates right on top and cut them out. Once I have all of my shapes, I'm then going to score and slit my sides and my bottom. And I'm going to start constructing my shape. Once I have my square cups, I'm then going to use excess scraps that I have. I'm going to score and slip them and put them into the corners to reinforce where the cup meets. I'm going to smooth those all out so I have a nice finished cup. Once it's bisque fired, I'm then going to get ready to apply glaze by wiping off my teapot and all of my cups with a damp sponge. This will just remove any dust or particles that will impede my glaze. I'm then going to measure out my lines using a ruler and a pencil. I'm going to draw them all on my teapot and also my cups. Once I'm ready, I'm then going to get a little bit of my black underglaze, pour it into a cup with a thin paintbrush, and I'm going to start applying my lines. I'm going to do this slowly, turning my teapot as needed, and if possible, trying to find a place where I can rest my hand to make sure my lines are as smooth as possible. If I make a little oopsie mistake, not a problem at all since I'm using underglaze, or this would work with glaze as well. I'm just going to grab a damp sponge. I'm just going to wipe off that area and we're as good as new. So here's the finished product. I think it's so fun. It's really whimsical and plays on the 2D versus 3D forms.